there's something wrong, you know? And you said no. I think it's probably just because it feels really great to play someone that has no doubts for so long until he crashes. And and it is an interesting thing, this idea of this juxtaposition of someone that is all construct, all ego construction, and different forms of construction, and then the opposite end of the spectrum, which is, a human with none of that, no interpretation versus all interpretation. So that was a fascinating thing. And then the emotional thing that clicked for me is when we really started playing with the mirror idea, that there's a possibility that maybe there wasn't even a creature, that this is all in his mind, that it's just an extension of himself. And in some ways that allowed me to be even more cruel than I could have thought, because being cruel to myself makes a lot more sense. And you really think about the people that are so cruel, you can imagine what their mind is like to themselves. And so when I thought of the creature as just an extension, and that was the terror that we were talking about, which is what parenting can feel like sometimes. Parents do that the child is just an extension of themselves, an object, an accessory that either brings them pride or shame. And that was a real way in.
And that there's something very beautiful that happened, and I wish it was by design, but I believe the movie dictates itself. I think that the right grade should be a film by the film, because whatever happens for a reason if you listen. And the first scene we shot of them together is the final scene. The very end of the movie is what we. So if you ask me how it happened logistically, my producer said that's the only set we can finish on time. And, but I've had that experience before in Nightmare Alley, shooting the final shot that Bradley Cooper and I were mortally afraid of, right when we never expected it. And I said, let's go for it. And I really believe that both of you have such an essence of the characters in you that we could go at it. And we went at it, and there was a moment that we needed where your hand grabs his hand. After he explains, I will never die. And there's a simple gesture of Oscar's hand grabbing it that opens the emotion. But each of you, if you want to talk a little bit about going at it, none of us was afraid of starting with that.
Well, I can speak to that specific hand grab because I was terribly nervous because we hadn't quite clicked on how he would sound, and we were doing dialogue. We were shooting dialogue, but it didn't quite matter. At the end of the day, after speaking, I'd get a text from Guillermo and it would say, something tells me more gravel. And then the next day there'd be more gravel in the voice. But so when we got into this scene, it's kind of like whenever you have this sort of heavy emotional scene is on the call sheet, you can't rest or sleep or think about anything else because you're anticipating if you're going to be able to do this thing. And it just got thrown on us one day, and we hadn't spoken a terrible amount about the film or to each other. We barely knew each other, and it was action before we knew it. And then this moment happened when I walked past Oscar, and we'd maybe hugged when we met and spoken in Guillermo's office, but his hand reached up and grabbed my pinky, which was jutting out near his face, and he grabbed my hand. And in that moment was the scene, and electricity passed through him in this kind of spontaneous moment that let me know, not just as sort of the character, but as an actor, that we were going to be able to do this next 6 months together. It wasn't just about the relationship, it was this thing from an actor who I've admired for a long time saying, we can do this. And we met in that moment, and that came from whatever intuition, you've all seen these films, like whatever that is, it came from that moment, which is such a generous thing, but also such a profound thing, and it set the tone for the relationship of the characters for the rest of the film. So that's a play-by-play.
And I remember when Jacob walked in that very first time, and I was lying there, and I remember it as him walking in fingers first, because that it was just so shocking to see. It was so strange and mesmerizing and really heartbreaking and weird and uncomfortable and so
Actionable.
yeah, it was astounding. And then of course in processing it through whatever Victor had gone through, all the rejection, to suddenly find the beauty in it again. You know, he starts to see him for the first time again. It was incredibly moving. And so of course, the second I could, I just wanted to touch those fingers to be like I wanted to connect again. And what was amazing is that the next day, that's kind of all it will be. We shot the scene. I had spent this day, like you said, kind of anticipating it and trying not to anticipating it, but you know, all those mental gymnastics that one does, and you know, listening to certain music to stay focused and doing my rituals. And I had my trailer covered in William Blake photos, and you know, tried to maintain a lot of silence around me, and you know, called to mind family members that had passed, that I had been at their bedside. And so when the time came, we did it. I do remember there was one moment I suggested a cut, and I did it in one of the takes, and then you had said, I need that line back in. And I was like, I'm not sure if we need it. And you're like, your dad's still alive. Your dad's still alive. Mine isn't. I need to say this. You know, I need him to say this, which is that was something very profound. So it was just a reminder of what was emotionally at stake for all of us. And we did it. And everyone seemed very moved and happy, and we felt good, and you know, you were thrilled with it,
Yeah.
and I was too. And the next day we came back, and it was you were going to do an insert of the hand.
Just the
Just
whole
the
puzzle
hand.
of the hand.
Yeah, and you know, Guillermo this is the first time I've ever experienced this, but he was quilting the movie as we were making it. So we would do a take, and it would go right into the edit of the film, so that the movie was being edited and made as we were doing it. I think a lot of that had to do with the camera movements. You needed to see if they connected, because the camera's always moving. And so you had the scene edited already. With you had this temp score on it.
Yeah.
It was beautiful. It's Johan Johansson song track, and I watched it, and I was like, "Is that take 5? Was that take 5?" You say, "Yeah, that's take 5." I was like, "Okay, are you sure that's take 5?" You're like, "Cabrón, it's take 5. I know it's take 5." I was like, can we look at it? And then it wasn't take 5, but then take 5 wasn't that much better, you know? And I was like, "Okay." And then I went and I sat down. We were gonna just rehearse this little finger thing, and then you came by and you said, "What's wrong?" And I said, "I'm feeling a little insecure." And he said, "Well, you are an actor." And I was like, "No, I know, but I just wonder, like, when I said I'm sorry, should I have looked up at him, or should I don't know, I feel like something's not there." You're like, no, I feel like it worked, it's good, these are ideas you're having, you know, I think it's fine. And it's not all on you, it's gonna be the shot of the hands as well. I was like, okay. And then I left, and I was like, well, I'm gonna be a dead body for the rest of the night, basically. I just did this one little thing, so I started watching some shows or something. I ate some popcorn, maybe had a little shot of whiskey, I don't know. And then I came back, and the setup was different. And you're like, we're gonna do your close-up again. And I was like, what? He's like, you know, whatever, we're here. You know, it's like, you know, you did something, so if nothing comes, that's okay. And I'll just make fun of you for the rest of your life, so win-win.
And Jacob comes in just for a close-up. I'm like, we're gonna do it again.
Yeah, fuck these guys.
It's 2 in the morning.
These guys have made heaps of movies. I was new. And neither of them told me what was happening.
Because we're also speaking in Spanish all the
Guillermo, I
time.
don't know if you've seen, they speak Spanish. A. B. Have you seen, Guillermo's movies are incredibly detailed. This was the first time this man had not been detailed. He was like, we're just gonna, there's just little, we're just gonna see you here and through the window, it's one close up, it's not on you. And then they didn't tell me that we were redoing the scene, so I sat down. And I had sat down, and I kind of just was like hiding my face from the camera the whole time. And then the camera's right here. And luckily it was just a close up. But in my brain, because I'm also an actor, I thought that I had ruined the whole movie because it was my first time really speaking. And I thought the studio and Guillermo and Oscar were having meetings, being like, this isn't going to go anywhere.
Should we tell him now?
When do we let the kid go? And my
Let
mom,
him find out
my
from the
mom-
travel order.
My mom was on the listen, this is big. This is a big budget movie. They were just telling you they didn't. And I'm sitting there, like losing my mind. And these assholes are just going again. And that's what's in the movie.
That's the thing in the movie.
But, I just to say,